that's you're right. It has been 2 decades. It doesn't seem that long, but it has been, and longer for the books. My approach was really to remain loyal to the work that got us this opportunity to tell the story, and that is stay loyal to the readership, Jeffrey Deaver's readership, which is still vital, still out there, still worldwide, and to remain loyal of sorts to the movie as well. I mean, Denzel really made that character Lincoln Rhyme his own, and of course Angelina Jolie was very compelling on screen. So on one hand, you look at that and say it's kind of a daunting task. On the other hand, you say it's an amazing opportunity to remain loyal to the source material in the books and the movie, and at the same time, really make this property our own. Russell Hornsby as Lincoln Rhyme really did that. I mean, I like to say that Russell and Ariel Kevel as Amelia just sort of took those roles and into their hearts. They really made them unique. So the approach is to stay true to the franchise and at the same time elevate it and go deeper and bring really compelling stories to the screen and tell the story of the Bone Collector in season 1 in a more human way. We got to go behind the scenes with the Bone Collector and tell the story of his duality. He's a serial killer, yes. He's a monster, yes. But he's also married, and he's keeping the pretense of a life together. He works as a freelance criminal tech, and it was a way to sort of bring him to life, and in so doing, bring humanity to him, and I think make him more terrifying. Well, that is sort of a follow-up question to the first one. Making this, again, I have to say, I really, really felt compelled to remain loyal to Jeffrey Deaver's body of work, which is incredible and growing, and he's got a very vital audience base. But we took the opportunity to make the show our own, to go. I think my first answer to that question would be character. Go deeper into character. Tell us maybe perhaps a more nuanced story of Lincoln Rhyme in 2020, the great detective who is suddenly sidelined with his loss of mobility due to his accident, and we attempt to really tell that story, what it is to him to adjust to a new life. We have a number of, I guess I'll call them disability consultants, who have described to us that, they are disabled persons themselves, and they describe to us that the loss of mobility is, yes, an ending, but it is also a new beginning. And we tried to lean into that story with Lincoln Rhyme to tell the new beginning of his life in his new situation. We also, I think, detailed his task force. He brings Amelia Sachs in, as you know from the books and the movie, to be his eyes and ears in crime scenes, and his legs, as it were. She is partnered with Mike Solito, a very tough, sort of old school New York detective, played brilliantly by Michael Imperioli, who you know from The Sopranos, who is literally, they describe him as the actor's actor. He is just a true artist. So it was a pleasure to work with him, and hopefully we will going forward. And we tried to build the task force. Kate and Felix. Kate is the technical advisor, is sort of our forensic technical person, investigator, and Felix is our computer expert / genius. And they are very kind of quirky, fun characters. They're brilliant. They are very much a part of every investigation and a part of the hunt for the Bone Collector. And lastly, we brought to life Lincoln's relationship with Claire, his caregiver, who is sort of omnipresent in Lincoln's apartment and attending to Lincoln, being enough in the background to give him freedom and autonomy, but sort of being there every time he needs something. And all of these threads, as it were, come together in our final 2-hour finale. I don't want to give it away, but you'll see how they all play a part and come together in the final confrontation with the Bone Collector. Absolutely. Just as a footnote, I worked on a show called Gone, which was an NBC Universal International show starring Chris Noth. It was a missing persons kidnapping series, and I worked very closely with TF1 and RTL in France and Germany, respectively, and really sort of got a master class in the difference between a U.S. audience and a worldwide audience. As I said, I worked on CSI Miami for 8 years, but I really focused on the show here in America, although the show was shown around the world. But on Gone, I really learned that audiences worldwide are very sophisticated. Not to say in the US that they're not, but they're worldwide. They're just in Europe and Latin America and in other places. They seem to ask more of stories like ours, and they are ready to sort of consume a complex story, a human story, a character-rich story. And I personally feel like that is a wonderful invitation for us in season 1 and hopefully beyond to write to those tastes and write to that sophistication. I used to say on Gone, we can't fool an international audience. They're not going to be, they're smarter than this. So we want to elevate the stories. We want to go deeper into character, like I've been saying. I have, sort of rang the bell for our writing staff and our production staff to make our cases compelling and complicated and not easy to solve, and perhaps not easy to see how they resolve. And following your question, I think that goes right to the sophistication of an international audience. And I think characters too. We want to see audiences want to see themselves reflected in the series, as it were. So I want to bring characters that look and sound like our audience. So I feel grateful to this audience. I feel grateful to the international audience. So, thank you for selling the show, and thank those who watch, and hopefully we have a long association. I have a history of sort of folding brands into the narrative. On Miami, CSI Miami, our principal brand, I guess, was Hummer, the vehicle, and it was a natural fit because every time Horatio Caine pulled up to a crime scene, he got out of his Hummer. It was very sort of organic to the storytelling, and I like to use that as an example with brands. I personally like that relationship, story meet brand. The key is just to make the brand be organic to the story. You don't want someone holding up a glass of iced tea and looking in the camera and saying, "Oh, Nestea, isn't it delicious?" You want it to be, very natural, a natural occurrence in the storytelling. And I think there's an opportunity for all kinds of brands to find their way into our stories and to get onto the screen naturally. We've done that a bit with Microsoft, with Intel. We're a forensic show, so we're technically based, and both Microsoft and Intel provide hardware and software that that goes to that process. You know, what is it to be in the lab? Well, we're using an app from Intel, or we're using a device from Microsoft, and it feels natural. And I think there's a chance to do that across the board. Is my only rule is that it just needs to be sort of a natural. It needs to be woven naturally into the storytelling. And I think audiences or consumers will sort of take in the brand easier that way. It's just not jarring. It's not forced down their throat. But long way of saying, I really love that relationship. Brands meet storytelling. I think it brings the world to life in a realistic way. People recognize the world they live in when they see the products that they're either using or they want to use on television. Well, the body cam is a great storytelling device. It's something that I don't think we've seen before. We see, we hinted at it in the movie, although that was, as you mentioned, 2 decades ago. So technologically, we've advanced quite a bit. Amelia Sachs is, she, as you say, she's wearing the body cam, and she's able to bring the crime scene to Lincoln, and Lincoln is able to experience the crime scene across a myriad of screens, and he's really there in real time. It's an exciting sort of, I don't know, it's an exciting window onto a crime scene. Personally, I've been doing these shows for a long time. I've never seen this before, and it was exciting. It did provide some production challenges, I'll say. I mean, if you think about it, we had to sort of shoot every scene twice. We shot the scene with Amelia Sachs and Solito, et cetera, in the scene, investigating, looking for clues. Then we have to achieve the same thing through the perspective of the body cam. So our directors were under great stress to sort of get all of this done in the contained hours provided in a workday. And it adds a dimension to our storytelling that I think is very novel and very interesting and compelling. Hopefully it brings the audience into a crime scene intimately, just as it's bringing Lincoln into a crime scene intimately. But behind the scenes, it can be a little, it's a unique challenge. I've never had that challenge before. And we're looking at ways to sort of make it easier, maybe use a GoPro camera so you can kind of do everything at once. But it's certainly worth it, because it's really, really, I think, an exciting way to tell a story. You don't want to just live in that shot for a long time. I think the creative way to do it is very stylistically. You see brush strokes of the body cam footage, and you see, I think you want to see Lincoln's reaction to a crime scene almost more than you want to see the crime scene itself. You see the great brain of Lincoln Rhyme as he's processing what he's seeing, and he's clicking through his memory, which is prodigious and powerful. And I like to see him interacting rather than just flatly showing, cutting from body cam to the real perspective. I think it's done. I think we do it slyly. We don't abuse it, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. It's an art. We try to use an artful approach with the body cam. Well, it's interesting. A lot of people were looked at for both roles, and I really feel that Russell and Ariel, who, by the way, are very different, and it's fascinating to watch them work together because it just crackles when they work together. But I like to say that they really sort of took the role. It was just sort of a sense of undeniability. Russell Hornsby is Lincoln Rhyme. He's a Shakespearean trained actor. He's been on Broadway. His body of work on film is enviable. Notably, he was in Fences, Denzel Washington movie, the movie version of the play. He was on Grimm for a number of seasons. He's just a powerful actor, and it's fascinating to watch him with his loss of mobility. He sort of commands a room with just literally his voice and his eyes, and that's a hard thing to do. And he just does it so naturally. He just has got such a sense of command and such a sense of believability that I can't imagine anyone else doing the role. So that's why I use the word undeniable. He really just became Lincoln Rhyme. It was like, oh, there he is. That's him. And in her own way, Ariel did the same thing. I mean, Ariel was a child actress. She's been around for a long time. She's done a lot of really, really interesting projects. She brings an intensity to this role that I think, in a way, no one else did in the audition process. She just really felt her. She felt Amelia Sachs. I've heard her actually say that. Amelia Sachs is a part of me. And she has a very, her work comes from the inside out. She believes it, so the audience believes it. And you're just inspired as a writer, producer to tell her story and to tell Lincoln's story in a deep, more meaningful way, because these two actors are so powerful. They will go there and they will bring these characters to life in sophisticated ways, which goes back to the international audience. This is what they want to see, I think. We did film in New York. Our home base was New Jersey. A very interesting little sidelight into our sets. We shot at a facility called the Izod Center, and the Izod Center was built for the New Jersey Devils hockey team. So it was essentially an ice rink, a hockey rink. And the New Jersey Devils have moved their team to another facility, and the Izod Center was sitting, they would use for concerts occasionally. But NBC made a commitment to that location, and we built our sets on the spot where the ice used to be. So it's kind of a large oval housed all of our sets: Lincoln's apartment, Amelia's apartment, our precinct, our basic sets. Matter of fact, my office was in one of the press boxes, which was kind of interesting and kind of cool. We shot both in that location. We shot in and around New Jersey, Jersey City, Newark, other parts of New Jersey, and we did go across the bridge to New York pretty much consistently. So what we found was you can shoot New Jersey and it looks like New York. You can't tell the difference. Like the exterior of our precinct is New Jersey and it looks like Manhattan. There are shots in which you will see it's undeniably New York. Those broad, long shots of Manhattan or the Park or et cetera, places that we shot like that, Grand Central. These are iconic locations in New York that are clearly in New York. So we got the best of both worlds. We had a great home base, very unique place to shoot. New Jersey, very, very different, offers a lot of different looks, urban looks, rural looks, and we sort of took advantage of all of that. And then when we went to New York, I used to call them high impact days. We're going to be in New York, and we shot, our characters set against that great city. One little footnote about New York is that within the disability community, New York is known for being sort of inhospitable to the disabled and their challenges. There are very few ramps. The sidewalks are uneven. It's hard to get around when you're in a wheelchair or you're in, another form of mobility limits. So we try to use that in a subtle way and weave it into Lincoln's character as he's sort of overcoming that and getting accustomed to a city that he knew, in the life before the accident, and now he's adjusting to life after the accident. So I felt that was a very important element to his story. Well, there were many discussions, as you might imagine, regarding what to call the show. And the idea, there were a number of points of view. Point of view number one was, let's remain loyal to the readership and to Jeffrey's books, and of course the movie. And of course, The Bone Collector is the title of Jeffrey's first book, and the name of the movie. We wanted to, thus the back and forth over what to call it. Ultimately, the title sort of landed in this way. We want to continue to tell this story. We want to continue to tell this story over a number of years. And there may be a season in the near future in which the Bone Collector is a secondary character. And we're hunting a new killer, perhaps taken from the pages of one of Jeffrey's other books. So we sort of felt like we didn't want to just limit our series to merely The Bone Collector, because we have a longer view of the run of the show. But it was a tough one. I personally like the idea that we're calling it Lincoln Rhyme, because all things come from Lincoln Rhyme in our show. We're hunting for the Bone Collector. Hopefully, in following seasons, we're hunting for a new killer. We're also solving what we call Case of the Week. He's put a task force together. We're trying to solve cases on a weekly basis. And the center of all that really is Lincoln Rhyme. He will continue to be. And I think audiences will want to sort of, as we evolve and deepen his character, I believe that audiences will want to go along that journey and that ride. And he becomes the most emblematic of the series, I think. And I think that's where we ended up. I worked for 8 years on CSI Miami, and, incredibly successful show, incredibly successful franchise with 3 versions: Miami, New York, and Las Vegas. But as compelling as those stories were, I always felt that we had an opportunity to go a bit deeper. If you look back on CSI Miami, we never went home with the mysterious Horatio Caine. We never really got to know, too deeply what lay beneath the mirrored glasses. And I think that certainly was the style of the 2000s. And I think as we get into 2020 and beyond, I think we want to raise the bar of, the way these procedural stories are told. And for me, Lincoln Rhyme is the show to do that. We've got so many sort of entry points for an audience. We've got this hero who's been struck down by an accident, has a loss of mobility, and is adjusting and finding his strength moving forward. We've got Amelia Sachs, who is a young girl, and a life ahead of her, a million choices, yet she chooses to do this work. And we will try to answer the question, why does she choose this work? What does she get from it? What does it cost her? What does it cost her personally? What is her life going forward personally? What is Lincoln's life personally? What is his love life? What is her love life? And we've got Salito with the same questions. He's been a detective for many years, and what is his life when he goes home? And I think we want to tell those stories and grow our characters so that they are relatable and human, and they're accessible to our audience, going through the same things that our audiences are going through. And lastly, I think as we tell the procedural stories, I feel a very, an obligation to make them really intricate, complex, lean. I like to say you want them to have that lean forward dynamic where you're leaning forward in your seat. You don't know how it's going to end. We don't know how our heroes are going to get through these challenges and solve the crime. make them exciting, make them feel very true to life. And I think all of those components mixed together creates, I think, a new style of procedural television that's more human, more real, and yet, pulse pounding, I guess, really, really as exciting and thrilling as we can possibly make these stories. And then, of course, our big bad, The Hunt for the Bone Collector, you're going to see we go behind the scenes with the Bone Collector. We go home with him. We lean into his duality. We see that he is, yes, a killer and a monster. He's also, he also has a wife and a life, and he's hiding behind the pretense of normality. And we really tell that story. And I think that's another aspect of the next generation of procedurals, where we really tell a more complete story. Well, I'd like to lead with gratitude. I really am grateful for the audience out there, the audience worldwide, in every sector of the world, and our Latin American fans, European fans, all over the world. I want to say thank you. I want to say that I hear you, and I want to communicate with you and to you as we go forward. I'm grateful. I'm grateful for the opportunity. I feel like this is a privilege to tell the story, and I want to do it as passionately and truthfully as I can.